Should just take a few seconds for that to update, and it looks like it has. We are now live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chris Speaker's Corner. This is a actual live stream, and I'm very aware I don't do many of those these days, but we have a very special guest with us. We have Saint Murad, who has been producing his own Quran translation as a native Arabic speaker, as someone who was once a Muslim, now is an ex-Muslim, now is a Christian. He has gone through the Arabic text, the Quran, and he has translated it in such a way that it totally bypasses the sin, the standard Islamic narrative, and it gets to the heart of what the actual text really says in a much more literal sense rather than paraphrasing or taking efforts to change the meaning here and there. So, yeah, thank you for being here, Murad. Would you like to give a brief introduction? I hope I did a semi-good job there, just the very basics. But is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Chris. This is a very good opportunity to talk with you. Just a minor change to what you have said. I am an ex-Muslim and now I am a theist, so I believe in God. But you could say maybe not a Christian yet. I'm I'm still looking into it. So this is just for the people so that they know what's going on. So this is the
Well,
first
Lord
thing,
willing,
and
one day.
yeah. So the presentation tonight will be about the sin, the standard Islamic narrative, and why it is wrong, and how the standard Islamic narrative understanding actually corrupts a Quran translation, because all the Quran translations take this into account for fact. So this is what I will talk about tonight.
Sounds great. I'm aware you've got a presentation for us. If you want to dive straight in, Murad, I'm happy to get into that. If you want to present your screen.
Yeah, I am sharing now. So
Yep, we got it. That's
yeah,
it.
is it
We can see
full
it.
screen?
Yep, that's all good.
Okay, so the standard Islamic narrative, or as I call it, the standard Islamic hoax, and people will know why I call it this way. What is the standard Islamic narrative? Well, you have the exegesis of the Quran, you have the Hadith, you have the biography of Muhammad, you have Asbab al-Nuzul, which is like reasons for dissension. This is like the literal meaning of the word, but people they translate it as why the verses were revealed or something like that. And you have the Mecca and Medina phases. So verses which were in Mecca, verses which were in Medina. My question is this stuff valid to crack the Quran so that we know exactly what the Quran is talking about? Well, is it a Persian Quran? If I were to give you a Spanish book and ask you to explain it in detail, do you think it would be a good idea to ask someone who knows Spanish? This is a question for you, Chris. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if you gave me a Spanish book, yeah, I'd like to think that the person who explains it is familiar with Spanish. Yeah.
All right, then, why, when it comes to the Quran, you ask someone who does not know Arabic? I am talking about Al Tabari, Al Baghawi, and most of the famous translators. They were from Persia, they didn't speak very good Arabic. Most of them were Persians who didn't know Arabic well. This is why the exegesis of the Quran in most verses is laughable. Back in 2020, I made a video on Islamic Origins channel with Mel, proving that the Umayyads and the Abbasids might actually have been from Central Asia. And in all the depictions of early Muslims, you will find them looking Asian. And this is something in the Arab mindset, they do not like that very much. What is the caliph role in all of this? This is a question no one asks. We are not 100% sure of the motives of the caliphs. A lot of politics was going on, and the caliphs used to decide how you would explain this verse, how you would explain this hadith. Nothing like this could go without the caliph's consent. So why even listen to them? Because it is a general Islamic consensus. I think this is a bad idea. Back to the Persians. Ironically, the Quran is the only book where if you want to know the meaning of a word, you'd never open a dictionary. Instead, you go to these Persians who never lived in the same century as Muhammad, nor were Arabs, nor lived close to the Hijaz. And the main problem with these interpretations is that they are built on flimsy reports. This guy said to this guy, said to this guy, as you know, in the how the Islamic chain is going.
Mhm.
Who are these people? Why should I base my Quran translation on these tafsirs that are clearly a big sham? So I will ask you at this point, what do you think so far?
Yeah, I think the idea that people later could sort of narrate what actually happened is very unlikely, given that it's both political from the Abbasids and the Umayyads time, but it's also obviously trying to explain things. Like there are verses in the Quran, many of them, which just don't make any sense. Right? There's no context to them. In fact, there's entire surahs that have no context to them. So there's obviously a need to look at those surahs that have no context and to give them one. So I always find that suspicious when it's used more to explain something that in and of itself is just not giving you any information. I think it's very easy for someone to interject new information if there's no actual established context. Whereas, yeah, with these guys, the Umayyads and the Abbasids, like you say, they're Persian. So I guess like Arabic wouldn't have been their native first language, but like a second language they pick up, I guess, or something like that. Would that be right?
Yeah, and I can also recall that there was an Abbasid caliph, maybe he was the fifth or sixth caliph, that he couldn't speak Arabic at all, and this is from the Islamic narrative. He only spoke Persian. And also, I remember that there is a report from a Western source talking about Harun al-Rashid, one of the Abbasids, and they call him the king of Persia, not the caliph, not the king of Arabia, Persia. So these people, they were Persians, and this is their depictions all over. If you look at the earliest depiction of Harun al-Rashid, you will find he looks Asian. He doesn't look like Saladin in the Kingdom of Heaven movie. This is something that we
Yeah,
think of today.
that is interesting. Yeah, we often forget just how much we think about the Arabic invasion of the Middle East, and we kind of think of it as Arabizing completely. You know, like one minute the Middle East is not Arab, next minute it is with the invasion of Umar or whoever it was. But we forget that there's obviously already established cultures there, and it doesn't just disappear overnight. So Islam and the caliphs and the Umar, they all have to merge with these cultures, and it's kind of interesting trying to figure out exactly what role that had.
Yeah, exactly. But as you can see in this presentation, I am looking into the Quran and how all of this actually corrupted the Quran one way or another, because the Quran uh, it emerged from a different place than from these tafsirs. So it made these very big mistakes. Now, what is the SIN Quran translation, Standard Islamic Narrative Quran Translation? An overarching theme in Quran exegesis is anything the commentators do not know the meaning of in the Quran, they actually put it into the afterlife because they know that no one can come back to life and prove them wrong. This is a very sleazy marketing tactic. An example would be the word Kawthar in Surah 108, verse 1. They do not know what does this word mean. They say it is a river in paradise. This is pure comedy because, of course, this word has a Syriac meaning and it means something like uh, a lot of praying, abundance in praying, the way that the monks do. But because this word is not Arabic, it's Syriac, they do not know. So they used their Persian understanding to get closer to it and they say it's just a river in paradise, which of course you cannot prove it.
That's really interesting because I'm aware of this particular verse because it's often used to claim that Muhammad knew he was going to be in paradise when he dies. Because supposedly they will, even though Muhammad isn't there in the text, his name is not mentioned there, they'll say that this is about Muhammad. And since it references rivers in paradise, this must mean that Muhammad knew he was going to get into Jannah. But that's interesting, knowing that there's actually a big issue with the very translation itself.
Yeah, the translators, they're using the sin because they do not have any other alternative.
Yeah.
But but that's the reality, is that Kawthar is a Syriac word that has nothing to do with a river in paradise.
Interesting.
And also they say the phrase, the people of knowledge differed about this issue, about everything. When you ask today's Arabic-speaking Muslim apologists, why do Muslim commentators differ about every single issue in the Quran, they will say something like, this is because this is the mercy of Islam, or some stuff like this, which of course is very funny and
Yeah.
very illogical.
It's very fluffy language, right? You know, it's emotional language. This is the beauty of Islam, or this is, it's okay, sure.
Yeah, and of course you have a lot of experience in Speaker's Corner, and you have seen this stuff over and over again. But this comes from the tafsirs, comes from the exegesis. This fallacious mindset comes from the standard Islamic narrative. So this is not because the Islamic exegesis is so ignorant about the Quran. This is the reality. That's why they say such weird stuff. They do not have access to the Bible. They do not have access to Syriac, Aramaic, Hebrew, all of this stuff. They were from Persian background, Zoroastrian background, and they didn't know what they were talking about, actually.
So just to jump in, so I'm aware that when we talk about people like Bukhari, I know Bukhari is much later in his hadith side of things, but he was born in Uzbekistan, or modern day Uzbekistan, if I remember correctly. So
Yes,
it kind of
yes.
goes to show you that some of the greatest thinkers and scholars in Islam are actually based quite far away in very different cultures. So I think like in Bukhari's case, he actually does move closer. I think he moves to like modern day Iraq. But yeah, these people come from very different cultures that aren't so close to the events, and they're trying to learn things as they go by. Especially in Bukhari's case, when he's trying to figure out what did Muhammad say and what did Muhammad not say. Being hundreds, if not thousands, of miles away is probably not a good starting position to find yourself in.
Yeah, in this presentation, I will also talk about Bukhari. But for now, what I want to tell the people is that it's a very good idea to detach the Quran from anything that came after it. Not because I am a Quranist, like some people are Quranists, they want to save the Quran. No, this is not the idea. The idea is that now we know that the Quran came from further north, from areas around Syria, Palestine, areas like this. We know this from the text. But Bukhari and Al-Tabari and these exegeses, they came from the east. So they are not really related. This is something that we take for granted today, and actually it was finalized during the Ottoman times. So this is something that I will show after a while. So just this reply is very stupid or absurd. The reply that this is because the mercy of Islam, that they differed about every single issue. Even قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, which is say that Allah is one, they differ about the issue.
Just to jump in, Murad.
Yeah.
Hannah Summer, thank you very much for the donation. Means a lot to me. Thank you very, very much. And yes, I'm glad you can. Anyone who's looking, I've actually pinned the link to Murad's Quran translation into English. He's also got one that includes both an English translation and an Arabic translation. If I'm right there, Murad. And
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, there's now a link that is pinned. If you guys want to check that out, you can get it at his Buy Me a Coffee store.
Okay, so another overarching theme in all these tafsirs or exegesis of the Quran is the phrase Allahu A'lam, meaning Allah is more knowledgeable, fraudulently translated, by the way, as Allah knows best. Actually, it's Allah is more knowledgeable. Allahu A'lam. Why do they use this phrase? It is not because they are humble, it is because they really do not know what the Quran is talking about. I mean, picture this. Someone says, "Excuse me, where is the near Starbucks?" And the other guy will say, "Well, basically, there are nine opinions." You will say, "You sir, you are crazy."
I wasn't expecting that.
But the same guy, he could ask me, "Where is the nearest Starbucks?" 61 9th Avenue. This would be my response. Why? Because I could actually trace the words I use in my Quran translation to the actual dictionary and to Syriac and to Aramaic. So this is a very different thing than the usual Quran exegesis. So now we will shift gears a little bit if you want to interject, or I could continue. So we'll talk about the Sunnah.
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, keep going.
Okay, so the Sunnah, it came actually from Transoceania, not Arabia. Here are al-Sihah al-Sitta, the 6 Sihah. Al-Bukhari, Al-Nisapuri, Al-Qazwini, Al-Ash'ath, Tirmidhi, Al-Nasa'i. So these people, Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Ibn Majah, these people, the Sihah al-Sitta. Where was al-Bukhari born? Place of birth, Uzbekistan.
Hey, I
Nisapuri,
was right.
yeah. Nisapuri from Nisapur, Iran. Al-Qazwini, Iran. Just the name Al-Qazwini, it means the Caspian. So he's from the Caspian Sea. Al-Ash'ath, Iran. Al-Tirmidhi, Uzbekistan. Al-Nasa'i, Turkmenistan. So these people, they were born very far from where the Prophet of Islam supposedly appeared. Let's pinpoint these places on a map. Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Iran. And here is the Persian Gulf and the Caspian Sea. So you can see it's very far east. No one is from Arabia. Plus, oral traditions survive at the same area it was born in, like the indigenous people of America. And since all Sunnah writers came from places other than Arabia, then the claim of oral traditions being passed down from Muhammad is actually fraudulent.
Yeah. It would be like if you heard someone like narrate something that had an American grammar, but you've never been to America and you're like 1,000 miles away, you're in Germany or something. It would be very strange to think that you've accurately got that translation that can go all the way back to a person if you've never been there and the person lived like 100 or 200 years ago.
Exactly. So this is exactly the point. So it's not just that it's like Chinese whispers game. No, also there is a problem with geography. So here I ask the question, is Sahih al-Bukhari a hoax? Sahih al-Bukhari doesn't have one original manuscript. This Moroccan scholar called Rashid Eilal wrote a whole book about it. Until now, no one debunked him. The name of the book, Sahih al-Bukhari Nihayat Ustura. In English would be Sahih al-Bukhari, The End of a Myth. And this book is printed in Arabic. Debunking him requires one thing and one thing only, a manuscript from the time of al-Bukhari, or even close. That never happened. Muslim scholars created a pseudoscience called Ilm al-Rijal, or the science of men. Actually, this is hocus pocus because they cannot trace the tradition back to Muhammad. So what about the others, Sahih Muslim and the rest of the Sihah Sitta? Well, their case is even worse than Bukhari, as explained again by this Moroccan scholar in his book. Plus, these writings in Bukhari are not all about Muhammad. You have the example of the she monkey getting stoned. Where is Muhammad in the story? And I ask you, what do you think so far?
Yeah, well, hopefully he's not the she monkey, I guess, you know. But yeah, this is really interesting. I have not heard of this guy before. Do you know if his works have been translated into English, or is his book just purely in Arabic at the moment?
No, it's just in Arabic, and people they are
Ah.
only cursing him. They are saying he's an infidel, but they never read the book. He is saying, guys, please show me just one manuscript that's even close to the time of Bukhari.
Yeah, I'd love to read this, but obviously I'm going to need some kind of translation. But yeah, that is amazing. I am aware of the manuscript problem with Bukhari. You know, he has these Sahih works that he produced with all the most authentic hadith and all the ones that he didn't write down that he destroyed, which I find very suspicious and difficult to accept. But the idea that we don't even have a manuscript that goes back to that time, and at this point, this is the 9th century, so it should be pretty easy to get a manuscript, you would think, but nothing there.
Yeah, this man, because of course I didn't put all the details in this presentation, but in his book he says the very first, like an equivalent to one volume of Bukhari, appears in the Middle Ages. And the finalized version of Bukhari is actually at the time of World War One. You see?
World
This
War
is,
One. Wow.
yes, where you have the entire Bukhari.
So I
So,
have
yeah.
something maybe that's related to this, because I learned probably about a month ago now. I was reading Gabriel Reynolds' book, The Quran and the Bible, and he basically, not too far into it, he actually explains. So you have Hafs and Asim, which is like the most common Quran for anyone who doesn't know. That's basically 95% of any Quran you pick up. Well, supposedly there's 4 different traditions of Hafs and Asim. And depending on, and you basically, in 1924, when they had the Cairo project to standardize the Quran and then distribute it, they had to pick which of these 4 chains of Hafs to go with because they differ slightly. And I couldn't believe it because I was thinking this is 1924. You know, so like that's almost 1,600 or 1,500 years have passed. You would have thought they would have ironed all this stuff out centuries ago and came to some sort of consensus over what his version of the Quran actually is. But it was still up for debate. And I find that just so fascinating. I wonder if that's a similar thing here, that, you know, it took this long for people to actually finally settle on, okay, this is like the definitive Bukhari work. And anything else is not authentic.
Yeah, with the Sunnah, the case is almost similar to the Quran.
Wow.
That's the idea. Everything was finalized during the Ottoman times with World War One. This is the reality of things. This is the manuscripts that we have, either for Sunnah or, as you are talking about the Quran, for Hafs. They had the problem in Egypt with the exams because they differed a little bit here and there. And Egypt, it followed Hafs, although before it followed Warsh, which followed Morocco. But then they went with Saudi Arabia and followed Hafs. So this is what's going on. They didn't have the final decision till World War One.
That's crazy, really. So bizarre.
So now we will move to the biography of Muhammad. It is another standard Islamic narrative hoax. This is the picture of Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, and this is an Abbasid caliph. I think this is the second Abbasid caliph. Also, this is the oldest depiction of him as a Central Asian guy with Asian clothes, Asian features. Al-Mansur, the second Abbasid caliph, is the one who requested from Ibn Ishaq to write the biography of Muhammad for his son Al-Mahdi. And this comes from the Islamic tradition, by the way. I'm not making this up. Ibn Ishaq wrote this biography 130 years after Prophet Muhammad's supposed death. Now, what is the problem? Problem is the original of Ibn Ishaq is lost. The original of Al-Bakka'i, which took from Ibn Ishaq, is lost. The original of Ibn Hisham, which took from Ibn Ishaq, is lost. Robert Spencer's Did Muhammad Exist shows very well the problems with the biography of Muhammad, and Crossroads to Islam shows exactly how the archaeology actually leads to Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. So this is the sin biography of Muhammad, very problematic. And of course, if you are a caliph and you ask someone to write a biography for your son, you will write something like Peter Pan, something like King Arthur. You will automatically write something that has fiction because your son wants to hear marvelous stories. So just the beginning of how they wrote the biography of Muhammad is problematic. And I ask you, what do you think so far?
Yeah. I have a very low opinion of the biography of Muhammad. I think a lot of it is embellished. A lot of it has probably been destroyed intentionally. I think that was the whole idea behind the science of hadith. It's to basically categorize what people want there to be about Muhammad that's useful in terms of his biography, and to get rid of anything that's embarrassing, like Muhammad reciting satanic verses, and so on and so forth. And they came up with a criteria to be able to do it. I haven't read Robert Spencer's Did Muhammad Exist? I have his Critical Quran, but I don't have this book. And I'm aware he's just published another book, which is also about the. Actually, I think it's a critical biography of Muhammad. Robert Spencer's just released, and I need to get that as well. But yeah, I'm completely with you. I didn't realize we didn't have Ibn Hisham, so that's interesting to learn as well.
Yeah, Ibn Hisham, the original, we do not have. We have small fragments from him. And about Robert Spencer, actually, Did Muhammad Exist goes very well with his new book, because in his new book, he shows that almost every single thing we know about Muhammad, it has multiple versions that are not just contradictory, but they are contradictory like crazy. For example, when was he born? They could say he was born at the year of the elephant, or 5 years before the year of the elephant, or 15 years after the year of the elephant. So this kind of discrepancy is just too much. Also, who was the angel who visited him first? Was it Gabriel? Was it always Gabriel? No, there are versions that it was Seraphil and then Gabriel. Was it real or was it a dream? Also, you have two versions within the standard Islamic narrative.
And I think it's important to highlight that when you have those variants that contradict each other, Islam is fundamentally these variants, these hadith, these traditions that always supposedly go back to Muhammad, but because there's differing accounts, they can't all be true. So for them, in there is Islam as a whole, when you take into account the hadith, they have tons of variants and tons of contradictions. They just don't think of it that way because they sort of make the Quran the amazing thing that's perfectly pure, and then everything else, which is what they rely on, they just go, oh, that's not the Quran, it's fine. But really, no, that is your revelation, because that's your entire religion. If you don't have the hadith, you don't have the sunnah, you don't have anything. So yeah, it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, exactly. So now we will move to Asbab al-Nuzul, which is, they translate in English, why was this verse revealed? But actually, the literal meaning is verses flying down from heaven, as you can see here in this picture. This is Asbab al-Nuzul. But of course, Muslim translators, they always have it as, why was this verse revealed? Reality is that this is a highly narcissistic, self-centered approach to the Quran, later created by Muslims after owning a complete Quran. On one level, it is made to cover up the fact that they do not know what the Quran is actually saying. And on a deeper level, it was crafted to forge the life of Muhammad into the Quran, when in reality the Quran does not know Muhammad. And of course, this might be a new theory to you, but I have talked before about the 4 mentions of Muhammad in the Quran. they could actually be a reference to Jesus, because Muhammad means the most praised, and just the way of saying Muhammad, the one who is praised, is kind of a divine title. You cannot have this title if you are just a mere human. And people could say, well, the Quran mentions Isa. Well, also the Quran, when it talks about, for example, Yunus, which is Jonah, it says Jonah, and it also calls him Dhalnun, which is the one of the whale. So no problem. The Quran uses multiple names for a single person. What I'm saying is that the Quran is detached from Muhammad, and the whole idea of Muhammad was added later to the Quran by the Abbasids.
I'm just going to jump in and say I very much agree. You've obviously done a much bigger dive into this than I have, and obviously having translated the Quran, you have a much bigger scope of this than I do. But from what I have looked into, those 4 references, especially when one of the references, because there's a reference that talks about Jesus in a particular way. I think it's something like Isa is like a messenger or something like that, and just a messenger. And there's another verse that supposedly is about Muhammad, but it's basically the exact same as a previous verse that talked about Isa. And I remember when you look at that, you think, oh wow, yeah, that looks like it's a very easy case to make that was originally actually about Jesus as well, but was changed. So yeah.
Exactly. And also, someone told me, well, there is a surah called Muhammad in the Quran. What are you talking about? I tell him, you should look at the names of the surahs, because the original manuscripts, they did not have surah names. Also, look at your own tradition, because this surah, it used to be called Surah Al-Qital, meaning the surah of combat, not the surah of Muhammad. This is a later renaming of the surah, and actually a lot of surahs in the Quran are renamed, and this is within the Islamic tradition. And there are books. Remember when Hatun showed the 37 Qurans, there
Yep.
are other Qurans with different surah names, and they are very critical, because just the changing of the name shows what was being done to manipulate the text.
Oh wow. I did not know you could still get them, like different Arabic Qurans with different surah names. That's interesting.
One has Surah 17 as Surah of the children of Israel, not Surah Night Journey, because it is about the children of Israel. It's about Moses. It has nothing to do with Muhammad. And this, I have a photographic evidence in one Quran, which actually has it as Bani Israel, not Surah Night Journey. So this is a very powerful example, you see.
Yeah, that is amazing. Wow.
So now we will move to Mecca and Medina. I ask, Mecca or Medina, or Muhammad and Moses? The Sin Standard Islamic narrative claims that these verses or surahs, they were revealed in Mecca, while these were in Medina. Reality is his immigration from Mecca to Medina is a hoax. It is remodeled on Moses' exodus with his people out of Egypt for being persecuted for their new monotheism. The details of this scam are not to be discussed here, but I have made a long video with Jay Smith talking exactly about how this was done. And in reality, they never used the word Hijri for dating the Arabs. If you look at the Muawiyah and how they used to date, they say according to the years of the Arab, not the years of the Hijra. The word Hijra came close to the medieval times. So it's also new, this Hijra idea. Also, the Yathrib, it was renamed to Medina in the medieval times. You see?
Interesting. Yeah.
So this is another Sin Standard Islamic narrative hoax to make the Quran fit the story of Muhammad. Adding insult to injury, no one actually agrees which verses are Meccan and which are Medinan. And sometimes half of the verses in Mecca and half is in Medina. Again, picture this. I am in Mecca, I told you something like, hey man, let's go grab some. And after 2 to 4 weeks of traveling, I tell you, coffee. What is this?
I've always wondered. It is kind of because I've heard that he said a little bit of the surah in Mecca, and then he said the rest of it in Medina, or sometimes it's even more like this little bit in Mecca, this little bit in Medina. Then, and it gets quite strange in thinking on why revelation would come that way. But yeah, this is a funny illustration about how it's all split up like that.
Yeah, so the easier explanation is that this is just a lie.
Yeah, I do think I would agree that we should probably discount the Meccan and Medinian distinction in the Quran because it isn't helpful.
Yeah, so here there are things that are not mentioned in the Quran at all, and this is for the Western audience so that they are not fooled one way or another. Hijrah, specifically from Mecca to Medina, this is not in the Quran. Isra and Mi'raj, which is fraudulently translated as the night journey, it is not in the Quran. You do not have these words. Well, yes, you have them, but you have them here and there. You do not have them together, implying that there was a night journey for Muhammad to the seven heavens. It's not there. The doctrine of abrogation, it is not there. The word nasakha in my translation does not mean abrogate. How can I know? I will show you in this presentation. The black stone, not mentioned. Ashura, Muhammad's wives. Well, yes, but maybe if you say that he is Muhammad, but of course it is not mentioned clearly at all. It's just mentioned as the messenger, and this messenger, in a lot of cases, it's the angel messenger. Muhammad's companions, never mentioned. Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha, 5 pillars of Islam, and many, many more. These things come from the sin standard Islamic narrative. And back to you, what do you think?
Like, this is so important because these points you've got on the screen, these are all the central beliefs basically of Islam. I mean, even the 5 pillars itself is here, and it's completely right. Like, I've always thought that strange that so little of Islam actually comes from the Quran, like so little of it. Isra and Miraj. I've met countless Muslims that try and say the Miraj is in the Quran, but they can never find it. They're usually just referring to Surah 17, and they just haven't read it properly. But yeah, it really makes you think. Just when you strip everything away, the Quran is like a totally different book from what we've been led to think it actually is.
Yeah, and as you can see also, people, they make a lot of debates, Christian and Muslims. The Muslims, they always say something like, show me the Trinity in the Bible. I will tell them the word Tawheed is never mentioned in the Quran. That's even better. What do you think?
Yeah, so I have my own version of this. My one is show me the doctrine of Isma, the supposed sinlessness of the prophets. Like, show me where this is in the Quran.
Because, Isma, yeah.
Yes, forgive me. I have to guess with these words, as an Englishman.
No problem.
But so and they never can. And I say, look, I'll show you where the Trinity is in black and white as soon as you show me where this doctrine is mentioned. And of course, it's not only that they can't find it in the Quran; they also can't really find it in the Hadith either. It's such a just this thing that's just come out of nowhere. It doesn't come from the Quran or the Sunnah. And what's worse is the Quran in many different places explicitly says that prophets did do things that were sinful or did do things that were against God's will. So it's such a bizarre doctrine to try to defend when everything in your religious scripture says the opposite. That's the one I go to. But you're right. There's a ton of these. A lot of people go to Tawheed, or explicitly where Jesus says, or Isa says he was a prophet. Where it says to pray 5 times a day. The Shahada in the exact formula. Yeah, all these kind of things.
Yeah, and the word Tawheed, if you translate it literally in the correct way, it means unification, not unity, not oneness. And just from this word, you could actually trace back Islam, that it might have been a Christian heresy. It might have been Arianism in a new clothing. just by cracking this word tawheed, which is unification. So Islam doesn't have anything about unity or oneness. It's just unification. With unification, you need a minimum of two things. It could be three. So this is something that they never think about.
Interesting.
I say enough is enough. The sin doesn't have holes in it, it's just one big hole. Like Dr. J. Smith always says, you've got the wrong man at the wrong place, doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. Even Muslim scholar Yasir Qadi, he acknowledges this when he says that the standard Islamic narrative has holes in it. Don't worry, I will barbecue the sin on my channel. If people are interested, they could subscribe. So, the sin, I say it is a hoax. These tools, they are not valid to crack the Quran. If you want to know exactly what the weird verses in the Quran are saying, you cannot use such material which came way too late, way too far. You would need to look at material which came before the Quran. Actually, the Quran itself says, اسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون, which would be, ask the people of the remembrance if you did not know. And by the remembrance, if you see this word in all the Quranic contexts, you will find that this is the Torah, which would be the Jewish scriptures. It's telling you, talk to a rabbi, talk to a priest, because they know these stories. They are the ones who will crack me as the Quran. That's what it's saying. But of course, Muslims today, they will tell you, ask the Imam. There was no Imams, there was no Shuyukh. This is just a new invention that came much, much later. And now I will ask you, what do you think so far? Because I will go to the Muslim and non-Muslim Quran translations.
Yeah, absolutely loving this. This is really, really good stuff. Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay, now the question with the Bible usually is, which translation is better? But with the Quran, the question is, which translation is worse? Quran translations are so bad and deceptive that there is an online meme. They say this is the science of bracketology, because in the Quran you have more brackets than you have the actual text, because they could never give you the bare Quran, because you will know that it doesn't mention Muhammad. So they have to keep shoving him in there. Now, what did these translators have before translating the Quran? So you have Muslim translators and you have Christian translators like Robert Spencer and Osama Dakdok. Osama I love, of course, and this has nothing to do with his translation. It's just that I am saying we used very different methodology. They used the SIN, Standard Islamic Narrative, to translate the Quran, to crack the code. The Quran is the only book in history in which, when you want to translate it, you never open a dictionary, but you go to writings written by Persians who are way too late and way too far. Muslim and non-Muslim Quran translators started by translating from Surah 1 without creating their own concordance. This is evident from their lack of consistency in word choice. In reality, the Quran is very poor in vocabulary. So when you read it in English, you will feel that it has very rich vocabulary when this is not the case. Here, we will look at how the sin corrupts a Quran translation. This is the famous verse which is about abrogation. It says, ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها. ننسخ, they say abrogate. Almost every single Quran translation uses the word abrogate a verse. This is sad because if you look at this same word, it's mentioned 4 times in the Quran. ننسخ, and here أخذ الألواح في نسختها فينسخ نستنسخ. 4 mentions. The Arabic word نسخ has a common theme in all these contexts. Did they know the common theme? No, they didn't. That's why here they will say abrogate. And here they will say transcribe. And here they will say write. And all of this stuff. Why? Because they didn't create their own concordance. They didn't put a lot of effort and time to see exactly what this word means. I say it is not abrogation. People will find this in my translation. They will be shocked from my translation, of course. Ayah is not a verse. The Quran doesn't have the word verse. This comes from their obsession with the Bible. Let me tell you, Muslim translators are obsessed with the Bible, and I said this in another presentation. They have this biblical language in their mind, and they superimpose it on the Quran. The Quran is not the Bible. It doesn't use the word sin. It doesn't use the word verse. It doesn't use these religious words. It uses other language, more secular language, more business-like, business-oriented language. Very different. Like in the Bible, you have the word recompense. For example, the Quran has, in my translation, remuneration or something like paying for a job. This is what the Quran is using, business words. Before I move on, I will ask you, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is huge because their whole way of understanding Revelation hinges on Surah 2:106. That verse where it talks about things can be abrogated. You know, Allah can reveal one verse and then be like, nah, you know, this was fun for a while, but now I want to bring something equal to it or better than it. And if that really isn't what is meant here, then that has like tsunami waves of an impact on the religion of Islam and how people understand it.
Yeah, the doctrine of abrogation, why it was crafted, it was to open a hole so that you can abrogate the whole of the Quran if you like. So they will say, well, there are hadith that could abrogate a verse in the Quran. Now you are creating a new religion. But in the Quran, this word, it does not mean abrogate. Nasakha is making a copy. It is not abrogating. Nasakha, make a copy. If I say I have a nuskha, I might have a version. I have a different copy, something along those lines. You see, this has nothing to do with abrogation. This is the doctrine that came later.
Yeah.
So here again, ما ننسخ من آية. Here you have Osama Dakdok translation, you have Robert Spencer, and you have Sahih International. You will find that they will say abrogate a verse or revelation. Do you see any difference between Muslim and non-Muslim Quran translations here? Creating more sin-based translations is like beating a dead horse. I'm not talking about Osama or Robert. Osama is a genius in his own way. Robert also is a genius because of his Quran exegesis that he adds. I'm saying that it's not a very good idea to create more sin-based translations. We need to get out of the sin, because in my translation, you do not have verse or abrogate. And I have a very powerful case I could show you in every single context why these words are not what the author is intending. For example, here you will have Robert and Osama, they will say jihad means fight the infidels. I say jihad used to mean exert effort. This is without the sin. With the sin, it is holy war or fight the infidels. It's as if they are saying gay only used to mean homosexual, and I am saying, well, in the 50s, that used to mean happy, flamboyant. Now it strictly means homosexual. That's what I'm saying. That's the difference in methodology, the difference. That's what the sin is hiding. It's hiding this primitive meaning in the Quran. That's why I say they are oranges and I'm an apple, because we are different. We just use a different methodology. They are using what Muslims today believe. I am using what the Quranic author maybe intended and was lost to the sin. So here, the Muslim translators, this camp will say something like the Quran can't be 100% understood, but it is from Allah. And this camp says the Quran cannot be 100% understood because it's from a madman or because it's corrupt, something along those lines. But they are both relying on the sin. They are using the wrong tools to crack the Quran. It's like I want to open an iPhone and I get a knife. No, I should get its very specific tools to open it. Here, the Muslim translators, most of the time they are liars. They are trying to make Islam look better. But here, the Christian translators, they are sincere. They say it as it is. They try their best to give you what the Quran is actually saying, but using the wrong tools, just like the Muslims here. Now, if I give you white sugar, eggs, baking soda, vanilla, and milk, what will you create? You might create an amazing cake, like the Christian translators. You might create a horrible cake, like the Muslim translators. But in the end, it's a cake because you have the same ingredients, so you will get the same results. Same standard Islamic narrative, same results. So we've got a big problem. What is the solution? Well, a Quran translation that totally ignored the sin and worked with language only, aka the Murad translation. And I will tell the people to stay tuned. If we get to have another live stream, I will tell them exactly how I created this translation, because sometimes people tell me it's impossible to understand the Quran without the sin. I will tell them why. I did it. How do I crack a word? I check it in every single context in the Quran. Then all of a sudden I know what the author meant. I open the dictionary. I open the ancient Arabic poetry. This stuff that is close to linguistics. Muslims, they say Quran is a linguistic miracle, yet they never obsess about linguistics to crack the Quran. They are obsessing about this guy said to this guy, said to this guy. It's very weird. And my presentation is done at this point, and now I will get back to you.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for that. That was very eye-opening. I do very much appreciate that you, with your translation, you're not just taking the standard Islamic narrative that has come to us through generations and generations of Islamic scholars trying to do their best at understanding something that probably can't be understood using their method, but rather you go underneath it. You actually look at, well, let's just take the text, take away the exegesis that has been imposed on it, and let it speak for itself. And I think there's a ton of value in that. And it's definitely going to be very useful for me in my polemics and my conversations with Muslims, in particular when we talk about the Quran and what certain things mean. So that's incredibly helpful. I think maybe we could, if you want to, Murad, we could perhaps have people ask some questions, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
What do you think? Does that sound good?
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to go through the chat, but if you guys want to start putting any questions you have for Murad, and I'll pick them up, put them on screen, and you get a chance to get Murad to respond. So there's this one. I think you kind of covered this. But if you just maybe want to talk a little bit more about this, Murad.
Yeah, nothing wrong with Robert Spencer's Quran translation. It's just that it's a very different methodology. He used the Islamic understanding of the text. That's what happened. So, for example, he will say, you cannot eat swine because this is the Muslim understanding of the text. In my translation, actually, the Quran doesn't mention swine or pigs. So Muslims can eat bacon. In my translation, there is no abrogation. Why? Because I used just the linguistic method. So it's very different than the translation of Spencer.
Nice. Just looking through comments, trying to see anything I want to bring up. Can't see any questions yet, guys. Oh, wait. No. I think there were some questions a lot earlier in the stream. But it's there's a lot of chat. We managed to hit 200 people live at once, which is pretty amazing.
Nice.
I think I saw someone say that they bought your Quran translation as well. So that's really awesome. Thank you to whoever did that.
Yeah, that's very nice. If anyone wants to ask me anything regarding this translation, uh, just do it.
So,
For example, Chris, yeah, I do not have the word Yathrib in my translation. Why? Because I have seen this word mentioned in another context in the Quran, which made it clear that it is not a place, it is just an act. You see? How is this different? I do not understand. Jesus is God. Well, in the next expose, where I will show exactly how I translated my translation, you will see that I used a totally different method. I didn't use the standard Islamic narrative at all, no hadith, no Muhammad, no exegesis. So this yielded much different results. It might get us close to what the Quranic author actually intended.
So Human Kirk asks, so when can we expect this new translation?
Well, they can buy it now. It's in the link. I think the link is in the chat. But the official expose on my channel will be on the 1st of November. This is if you are skeptic and you just want to see exactly how I did my translation. First, you can check it. But if you want to get it now, just get it from the link in the chat and in the description.
I would encourage you all to do that. I have a copy myself, so I would very much encourage you all to do the same because it is an amazing translation and very useful for your conversations with Muslims or just for study. Hannah Summer says, is there a place where we can get your semantic and grammatical explanations?
Well, all of that will be in my expose on my channel and in future videos. But in my translation, I do not add any commentary, and this is something that you will never find. Any Quran translation, you will find very few brackets here and there, or some form of commentary. That's because they want to add Muhammad in the mix. So mine, it does not have that. It's just a pure translation.
Nice. Voni says, for Saint Murad, since your translation ignores abrogation rules, then what does it imply if not abrogation? And can you give an example?
Well, as I am saying, the word nasakha, it means make a copy. It's talking about signs. Ayah is sign, it's not a verse. So it says that the Quran doesn't duplicate a verse or cause it to be forgotten. That's what it's saying. So this is in my translation. And I have the backing of the Arabic dictionary. If you just say nasakha in the Arabic dictionary, and actually, Chris, there is something very funny. Within the dictionary, it will tell you nasakha means make a copy or have another version or make a duplicate. But Islamically, it means abrogate.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah. Wow.
What is this? You see?
So we have Prima Scriptura says, what is the best lexicon available English readers can use in reading the Quran?
To be honest, I do not think there is one.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
I was on this view as well. I know that there has been a lot of difficulty in actually producing a sort of scholarly accepted critical lexicon or even a concordance as such, because there's just so little interest in doing it, bizarrely. That's to my knowledge. Maybe things have changed a little bit, but if anyone is aware of some really amazing lexicons, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, I have created my own concordance, but it's just in a very amateur way. It's not to be published online. But this concordance, it took every single word in the Quran and checked every single context it's mentioned in the Quran. That's why it yielded this much different results.
We have Hobocop, I think that's how that's meant to be. Is the 7th century Arabic missing vowels? If so, how is it possible for words to be mistaken?
Yeah, the 7th century Arabic. I think it was not Arabic. It was Syriac, but then it got Arabized, and now all of a sudden you have Arabic. Because why would someone write something without vowels? This is crazy. But adding vowels over something which was already good and readable, this is what we can believe. So I was just using the Hafs. So all these surprises, I have it just using Hafs and just ignoring the standard Islamic narrative. Imagine if we also ignored all the vowels and got back to Aramaic and Syriac, then the Quran would be almost 100% correct.
Interesting. So you take Christopher Luxembourg and Gontolulik. I can't pronounce his name. I'm not sure if that's right. But do you kind of take their understanding that these were like original Syriac lexicons and they've been sort of like co-opted for an Islamic purpose? Is that kind of your view, or?
Yeah, but I did not adopt their understanding in my translation. Now, why is that? Because a good Quran concordance was never created. So I created my own, just assuming the Quran to be 100% Arabic and not Syriac. So that if I create another translation in the future, now I can judge if Christopher Luxembourg has the right word in Syriac because I already have my concordance. Because Luxembourg could say something now and I could just believe him blindly because I did not do my own homework. So that's why this translation that I have done is critical because it will serve as a future for another translation which will have the Syriac and Aramaic layer. This is like stratas of in the rock. So the Aramaic strata, you cannot work just from the Aramaic strata without doing the work with the Arabic, the original Arabic, or the final Arabized, as I say, the final Arabized Hafs.
So, the question for me, Crystal Speaker's Corner, will you read it live for charity? This is Dejan Petrovanik. I've probably absolutely butchered your name, so very big apologies if I have. Possibly, that is a good idea. I'm still sort of coming down from reading the Quran in a terrible English translation. I'm not sure if you saw, Murad, but I read the Quran live for just over 14 hours, just straight. And yeah, the translation I read was also really bad. It was really bad. It took so much liberties with the Arabic text. I mean, I'm not an Arab. I don't know Arabic, so but even I could tell they were taking some liberties. But we'll see what the future holds for that. Cool. I'm gonna say that looks about. Oh wait, maybe one more. I saw something for a second. I'm just trying to find it again. Just scrolling through comments. Mm-hmm. Can you ask what would be the best online translators website we can use?
Well, anything you will have online, it will have the sin understanding. So if that's what you're asking for, I think the less deceptive one might be Sahih International. It's a little better than Yusuf Ali, a little better than Mustafa Khattab, but they are all just bad. I would go with Osama Dakduk if you want the closest understanding to the sin with the understanding of the Arabic. But just to tell you, I think all these translations are, with the exception of Osama, I think all these translations are horrible. Either Sahih International or Mustafa Khattab or any of these.
Nice. So I'm going to do one more question, and then we'll wrap up and we'll call it a show. Marcel Al-Hind says, Brother Saint Murad, in Quran 3:7, it says, and then something I do not know. So why did Allah send this book to us? If only Allah understands it, how can we do an interpretation?
Yeah, this is the word it says تأويله إلا الله, which could be no one knows its interpretation except Allah. And the Quranic author, usually he flexes his muscle. That's what I see. Now, why is that? Because he wants you to be a Muslim, and a Muslim is someone who submits submissively. That's what you will find in the Quran. You have to be submissive, and you do not have any will. So the Quranic author or Allah is always flexing. Even when it says he is the best of deceivers, it's actually flexing. Like, even if you want to deceive, I am even better. I am good at good and I am good at evil. I will beat you in any game. This is the mindset of the Quranic author, because, of course, I have read it multiple times now, and I see that this author, he's kind of a narcissist. So that's what's going on.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Saint Murad. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I've wanted to have you on my channel for quite a while now. I've been incredibly busy with things, but I'm finally glad I managed to have you on so you could give your presentation. I would like to have you back for your second part, if that's good with you.
Yeah, we will definitely arrange the timing.
Awesome. Yeah, I cannot wait. Well, thanks again for everyone who joined. It's been absolutely amazing to have you all here. And we will see you in the next one. Take care.